If you're like 75% of the population, there's a really good chance that you've listened to a podcast show at some point in the distant or not so distant past. If you're like about 60% of the population, you listen to podcast shows on a regular basis. But have you ever considered what goes into creating a podcast show? Hi, this is Kathleen Gage with Power Up for Profits podcast and Plant-Based Eating for Health podcast. I've been on both sides of the mic well over 1,000 times, and I have to tell you, I know a thing or two about what it's like to get on shows and what it's like to bring people onto a show. A while ago, I actually did a series where I went to podcast hosts who had been podcasters for well over a year, and I asked them, what do you look for when you seek out guests, or do you even seek out guests? And it was interesting because there was a common thread with what each person was looking for. Number one, they wanted to make sure that the expert that was approaching them truly was an expert at something. Whatever it is the show was about, they wanted to make sure that that guest was going to be a match for their show. Next, they wanted to make sure that the guest or the wannabe guest had actually researched their show. Had they even listened to or watched an episode? It was shocking the number of hosts who said people would approach them. They didn't know anything about their show. They had never listened to or watched an episode. And yet they felt like they were a great fit for the show. No. You need to research the show. The next thing was, if the host didn't bring guests on, don't approach the host and say, well, I think you ought to break your model and I'd like to be on your show. Those three simple rules will get you a lot further than most people. And getting on podcast shows is a great way to reach your market, to get your message out to market, to create a movement, and to share your perspective and your point of view. Now, what about the flip side, starting your own show? Have you ever considered starting your own show? I'll tell you, it does take work. I recently had something happen where I had a gentleman approach me to be on my show, Plant-Based Eating for Health. The number one criteria with that show, and it states that in the description on iTunes, Apple Podcast, it's very clear that the only people who come on that show, and that's just for this show, Plant-Based Eating for Health, they have to be plant-based. They cannot consume any animal or dairy products. It's really quite simple. Now, my other show, Power Up for Profits, I don't care what people eat. I don't care what they consume. I do, but it's not as important as it is on my plant-based show. And so I emailed back and forth with this gentleman, and I made it really clear, this is what I look for. He assured me that that's what we would talk about. Then he started sending me messages of other things he wanted to add to the conversation that really had nothing at all to do with plant-based eating. I said, no, it's not going to happen. The show is about plant-based eating. So he said, okay, that would be fine. Well, 2 hours before our interview, he sends me a message and he wants to talk about things like 5G, anti-vaccinations, some other things that are equally as controversial. And it's not that I shy away from controversy, but that has nothing to do with the theme of my show. And I said, look, it's really apparent we're not on the same page, and I just don't think this is a fit. I'm going to go ahead and cancel the interview, because he had given me enough indication that indicators that he was going to do it his way. And as the host of the show, it's my way. Just like the host of any show, it's their way. They want to bring you on to entertain their audience. They want to bring you on to educate their audience, to bring valuable information, but not to create your own platform based on something they've worked very hard to create. So I said, no, we're going to cancel it. Well, then he sent me a message basically saying, you know how some people react in a really negative way to soy and to dairy and to this and to this. He goes, you sure are emotionally reacting the wrong way to my message. And I thought, wow, that certainly is not going to convince me that I should have you on my show. So the whole point being, as a host, you need to understand what makes that host tick. You need to understand what the host is really looking for. And if you're thinking of being a host, you need to set down that criteria. I actually am really excited because right now I'm involved in a campaign called Podcaster's Kit. It's by the same folks that bring you BC Stack for bloggers. Well, this is Podcaster's Kit. And I want to show you, I'm going to take you over and show you what's in this kit. And I can tell you for a $39 investment, you're getting thousands of dollars worth of information. So let's go ahead and go over. Okay, this is the Podcaster's Kit. And Rachel and Dan are very excited to bring you this information. 41 podcasting classes, courses, and training at over 98% discount. I got to tell you, the value is $3,145, and right now you can get it for $39. Real simple. You have 3 days left at the time of this shooting. By the time you see this, maybe you'll have 2 days left. Maybe you'll have a day left. But the one thing they point out is there are no conferences to attend. Everything is moving virtually, and podcast shows are becoming more and more popular by the day. So if you've been thinking of starting your own podcast show, I have to tell you, this is probably hands down the best investment you can make, because you're going to get 41 experts, myself included, who share power-packed information on what you need to do to start your own show, and once you have your own show, how to market your show. But we've got Double Your Offer, Be Heard by Millions, and Prospering with Podcasting Masterclass, the concise Launch Your Podcast Roadmap for busy professionals, Podcast Editor Academy membership, how to get your first $100,000 podcast downloads in 100 days, 30-minute marketing consultation plus 1 month of Audio Burst Premium. Start a superstar podcast that brings you closer to your big, bodacious goals. That's the kind of information that you get. And all you need to do is go to powerupforprofits.com. That's powerupforprofits.com/BC podcast. powerupforprofits.com/BC podcast. And I'll put the link below so that you can enjoy it, but I would encourage you, go check out the page, get the information on how to become a really good host, because there's a lot of opportunities when you are a host of a show. It opens up doors, just like being a guest. I work more on the side of working with my clients on how do you get on shows, because imagine if you would, that let's say you're on 20 shows and each show has an average of 1,000 viewers or listeners. That's 20,000 potential leads, 20,000 potential people who will take action on your information. So this is Kathleen Gage with Power Up for Profits podcast and Plant-Based Eating for Health podcast, encouraging you. Check out the Podcaster's Kit by going to powerupforprofits.com/BC podcast. That's powerupforprofits.com/BC podcast. And I encourage you, if you're thinking of starting a podcast show, check this information out. It'll save you a lot of time, a lot of frustration, a lot of money. When I first got involved in podcasting a few years ago, I went through a program that I paid $1,000 for about 7 years ago. That was 7 years ago. That $1,000 now is worth a lot more. So do yourself a favor. For $39, you can get information from 41 experts. I custom made the program that you're going to get from me. I custom made it specifically for this program. So I'll see you on the other side, and you have a great day.